Hello, we are Geeks Assembled, and today we are discussing a 1986 movie. It's sort of biopic movie of Sid and Nancy. Of course, Sid Vicious and his girlfriend Nancy. Oh, Susan, is that at the VHS or is it a DVD? Ah, VHS. Yeah, it's from 1986, and this is the story of the turbulent romance of these two and their sad demise. Um, yeah, looks fine there at the back of the cover there, Susan. Starring Gary Oldman and was it Chloe Webb?
That's Gary Oldman?
That's Gary Oldman.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, in one of his early film roles. He went on to bigger and better things, but to say this, you have to start somewhere. And admittedly, he has said in interviews he didn't play Sid Vicious that very well. In his own words, he said that. But we'll see what these two guys here think of that quote. So, Alex and Susan, your opening thoughts on the movie Sid and Nancy?
Okay, you're going first then, because he said you first.
Okay. I mean, they are important, and they are important to music, and they are important to the punk movement, I guess.
Yeah.
Some of it I understand, some of it I don't. I understand they were influential. Of course, they may have started, or they may have finally expressed people that did not want to worship the Queen or the Royals or whatever. But as we know, they're famous. They're kind of famous also for dying so young. And that I don't agree with. Yeah.
Only 21 he was, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean they both died so young. It is ironic or weird that Courtney Love was also in this movie. Hopefully she didn't have anything to do with Cobain's suicide. But again, we don't know what was going through their heads. But if this movie was even the least bit accurate, I'd probably only want to see them in concert, and that's about it. I probably wouldn't want to get to know them at all, hopefully.
True.
And like I said, of course, this is what was this? What was the real time frame of this? 60 to 79, or
it was 76 to 78, 79. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I'm not really sure. But there are the bands that I like, and there are the bands that, some of the members are no longer around, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I really want to be that hedonistic or that nihilistic that I go, oh, at 20 or 30 or 35, I want to sit in a hotel room all day, order illegal drugs, and die that way.
Well, like I've had this movie forever, and I love this movie a lot. And I'm glad we finally got to it. I'd like to do the some more of these sort of biopics because I really enjoy them. I don't know if I agree with what Lee said about Gary Oldman not playing Sid right, because
he said it himself. He said he didn't play him that very well.
Okay, but I don't think that that's necessarily true. But he may not even have been, aiming for Sid. He could have just been talking about this tragic character. And he's pretty good with villains and tragic characters. I mean, he did play Dracula, and he did play that guy with the metal head in Fifth Element. And I mean, he's played a lot of these sort of gruesome guys, and he's a really good actor. And so, I think he nailed it. And I pretty much love this movie. I've loved it since I saw it in 1986 or 7. And so it really was one of my all-time favorite movies. I saw it in a theater that I used to run in college, 1986. That's right. And we put it on the year afterward. So yeah, it was great. It was brilliant, and I loved the interplay. It was made by this guy Alan Cox, and I've ended up seeing so many of his other works. I saw The Revenger's Tragedy, with Christopher Eccleston and Eddie Izzard, and I saw and I've seen a couple other things that he did. Let me see.
There was another movie. I'm not sure when it was, but this is another one that was talking about it.
I guess. Okay.
Too much glare. Sad Vacation.
Oh, is that sort of like a documentary?
Yeah, it's another movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I saw Repo Man. Alan Cox did that one. Or Alex Cox did that one, and Oxford Murders. I saw that one. Let's see. I saw. I really wanted to see Scene Missing, but Kurosawa. I saw his movie on Kurosawa. Actually, I've seen quite a few of his things. I've seen Straight to Hell, Sid and Nancy and Repo Man, and Sleep is for Sissies. But I'm not to brag or anything, but I really like his stuff. Anyway, enjoy the heck out of Alex Cox's movies, and so even if Gary Oldman says that he wasn't, acting Sid right, he really did nail this character. And Alex Cox was in this movie. He was sitting in Rockhead's hotel room, where they went to order the drugs and stuff, and so that was pretty cool. And I liked the guy who played Johnny Rotten. He was fun, and the guy who played Malcolm McLaren. I mean, all of my favorite people. Yeah, well, Malcolm McLaren. He started Culture Club. He started Bow Wow Wow. Yeah. So I mean, Malcolm McLaren, he figured so strongly in the creation and the expression of Sex Pistols.
Didn't he have a lot of? I mean, he did sort of get into the rap scene as well with the Buffalo Gals and all that.
Exactly.
I mean, I like him, and I like what was the other one? The other one that was like a musical rap tribute to Madame Butterfly or whatever.
Yeah, Madame Butterfly. Yeah.
Yeah. But then again, I mean, now what has it been, 30, 40 years later? Sometimes I don't like it. I mean, I always will like The Art of Noise, but they weren't really musicians. They were musical engineers with one woman who did the theme song to Jeeves of Wooster TV show. But yeah, I mean, it was a weird, it was a weird time. And
it was a weird time, and there
was
lots of cool people.
Faith and
lots of cool people were involved.
Well, no, but what I remember is from the 80s. I remember Malcolm McLaren. I remember Howard Jones. I remember what is it? What's the other guy's name? The Thomas Dobley. Then you had the rappers come out, Run DMC and the Beastie Boys and all that stuff.
Okay, but this is pretty much all in London and America,
And I mean, I like Elvis Costello, but Susie doesn't.
I don't like him because he canceled the show in Postman.
And he made fun of the Beastie Boys, but the Beastie Boys proved him wrong on TV on Saturday Night Live, which was cool.
But this is.
I digress a little bit.
You have gone completely off the map.
All right, let me ask you something, Lee. If the Sex Pistols hadn't happened, do you think another group would have taken over? I mean, there was a couple of competitors.
Well, yeah, I mean, you had the Clash.
Clash. They did rap too. Big Audio.
You had the Buzzcocks. So.
The Buzzcocks.
Yeah, but the Sex Pistols. Yeah, but the Sex Pistols. Well, it was really John Lydon and Malcolm McLaren what took it by the throat and just spun everything around with the music. Sid and the rest of the band members were there for the ride, in my personal opinion. I mean, because Sid couldn't even play the bass.
Not very much at all.
No, because you notice in the film, every time they're on stage singing or whatever, he's not. He's somewhere else.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, somebody else would have come along. But say Malcolm McLaren was a good businessman. He knew how to sell something,
and he knew how to put bands together.
Oh yeah,
He knew who would be great with who.
I mean, and then you got John Ladd, people know him as Johnny Rotten, a very intellectual man.
Oh, and he started, and once the Sex Pistols broke up, he helped John Lydon form Public Image Limited.
Yeah. But going back to this movie though, it's you say we don't really know the truth about what those events of that night. This is just because of hearsay from someone saying that Sid and Nancy had a suicide pact, and they've gone down that route for this movie. But there's a lot of people in documentation saying that they had two visitors that night, drug dealers.
Yeah.
So we don't know what went on. But this movie sort of says, "Oh, we'll go down the suicide pact route and we'll tell the story that way." I mean, it tells a good tale, but as we say, we don't know what really went on because 4 months after Nancy died, Sid died of an overdose. So nobody's around now to tell the truth. So, but as you say, with Gary Oldman performance in this, I think he's utterly brilliant. For someone so young to get that role, I mean, he wasn't the first person they wanted. They wanted Daniel Day-Lewis for this.
Daniel Day-Lewis.
They did, yeah, but
that would have been a different interpretation.
It would have been a different interpretation.
Way more morose.
But they got Gary Oldman. In my opinion, is one of the best actors out there, and if he isn't, he should be noted. He should be a Sir by now for his contribution to acting, for everything he's done. Let's say Chloe Webb as Nancy. Yeah, it's brilliant acting. Brilliant acting. I mean, you as Chloe as Nancy. Gretchen was played by Courtney Cox.
Courtney Love. Yeah.
Courtney Love. Sorry. I know we're going digressing down another route there.
I was just because I mentioned Alex Cox.
That was it. Yeah.
So let me ask you a question, Lee. Were you at all in the punk scene, or did you know anybody in the punk scene?
Well, when punk was at its height, it got the Queen. I was 7.
Oh, so you were a little young for that.
Yeah. I was there when it was the Queen's Silver Jubilee of 1977, 25 years on the throne, street parties and all like that, and Sex Pistols was on the news. The song they'd released, "God Save the Queen," was destined to get to #1 in the charts, but the government didn't let it get there.
Now, how come I'm seeing other documentaries, even on Amazon, or mentions of other documentaries where I guess they made very little money or whatever?
Well, they most probably didn't, but I bet Malcolm McLaren did.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing. I knew some people back in the 80s that were saying that, he was really, but that's the other question, because when you're a manager or promoter, you can't say that everything is, on the up and up all the time. You can't have the band constantly there to make a deal. And this was also the days of, I don't know how can I put it? I don't know how commercialized it was in England. I know in America, it got very commercialized, and you're wasting all your money with promotions and posters and deals, and how many shows can you be on, and all this. That's
true.
That
was
true. I mean,
that was Annabella Lewin's complaint, and that's what almost broke up Bow Wow Wow.
Right.
In case you're wondering.
Right now,
she said that McLaren ripped her off, and then when he put Boy George in, that was to scare her back into the group.
Now I heard some allegations about Top of the Pops. Now that was the main show, right? Was that the main show?
Punk, you had to go to Grenada. You had to go up to Manchester.
Now, what
That
was
was the only TV show that would play punk for like 10 years.
Now let me ask you a question, Lee. Do you remember? I mean, I know you're a music fan.
Yeah.
Is it as bad as America in the sense that everything is, charged, so to speak, and you're in debt for like, $4 million, and then you have to sell like, 100 billion albums to back in the days when it was all records and audio cassettes that, that you had to sell like 1 billion records just to make money?
Oh, yeah, that's true. That is true. But, I mean, you don't have to sell many these days to make money. The record industry today is a totally different monster to what it was back then. Right. Back then, there was more competition. It was more dog eat dog. And for me, I think it was better back then. It was a better scene, I think. Speaking of what you mentioned about would someone else come along, I mentioned a few there, but also you had the Ramones,
right?
In New York, yeah.
They're roughly
the New York Dolls.
Yeah, the New York Dolls. They were roughly around the same time. There's an argument, that was it the Sex Pistols what created punk, or was it the Ramones that created punk? But hey, who cares? I mean, I wasn't a big fan of the punk movement, to be honest, because but I can appreciate what it did. It shook up the music industry, shook up the music scene, because it really did need it.
Dirty rotten imbeciles.
Because the music scene was just stuck in a rut.
Yeah.
It was going round. It was just going round. It was going round and round in the groove, and that's all it was doing.
There was so much going on then, like so much anger and animosity towards. In the U.S., it was towards Nixon and all that junk, and then in the U.K. it was towards Thatcher and towards the Queen, and there was just. I get it. It had to go that way, and there were other amazing groups around that time in that part of the world, and that was like X and Susie and the Banshees, and Susie Sue started that around that time.
Well, I mean, this is the other question,
and then like it led to bands like Dirty Rotten Imbeciles and Black Flag and and Dead Kennedys and all Circle Jerks, and the one of the members of Circle Jerks was in this movie, to lend it real punk cred, because Courtney Love was only grunge, but the Circle Jerks at the time in the mid '80s were the punk band in the world. I think some of them were from the UK and some of them were from America.
Well,
I mean, apparently, I don't know how true it is, but Slash was in this movie.
Slash was, but he was a metalhead. He was a metal.
And so if you blink and you miss it, and you see Iggy Pop.
Yeah, true. All right.
On the stairs.
So therefore, punk cred.
I mean, this is the other question too. Unfortunately, I haven't looked up my punk history in quite a while. My musical taste is more R&B and pop, and a little bit of the '80s rap.
Don't
or a lot
there.
of it.
Thanks.
It's okay, Susie. Relax. So this is the other question that I have, because then it changed, because you had R&B, then you had disco, then you had R&B blues. Then you had going back into new wave, and then it was techno. And even over here, the techno and the new wave was big.
But there are still punk bands to this very day.
Right. No, but
there's a venue in Somerville called Once that has huge punk shows.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still a thing.
I know. I just said it wasn't my type of music.
I know it's not. So I'm just helping you see, because it really was mine.
Okay.
I mean, I was a fan of this band in Portland, Oregon called 7 Year Bitch, and they were fucking amazing.
All right, you. Easy now. No, but what I'm saying is, yeah, I know she is a punk. See, this is one of the things I have a problem with. Of course, you can always show your jacket, your really rebel X jacket. I don't mind being a rebel, but I like being an intellectual rebel. And punk didn't strike me as that for the most part. How big was Iggy Pop on the punk scene? I think he was pretty big, wasn't he?
He was big. He came to the forefront when he sort of collaborated with Bowie in Berlin and all like that. Yeah.
Well, this is the other question. I mean, to be honest, how didn't Bowie have a huge influence on the British music scene?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't Bowie a little bit of a punk himself in a way? Of course, he's dead now, so he can't defend himself. But here we go. Here we go. So wrong, but here you go. Of course, it will be noted that she's also a Grateful Dead fan, so I don't know how that works into punk, but never mind that.
She's never mentioned that before, you know.
Yeah, I know. And she's a big fan. What are you doing? And a big fan of Boy George as well. And maybe Boy George is a little bit of a punk. But he does have talent. It's just not the type that I'm more pop type of thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've got to look at it this way with it's like the Sid and Nancy thing. Talent. There is talent and there's talent, and for me, Sid Vicious didn't have talent.
Yeah, it's a little tough. It's a little tough on that. Well, I mean, yeah.
He was there to lend cred, street cred to this band. That was it.
Yeah, but there was no talent there.
No, but he was there to lend street cred, to lend drug cred to the Sex Pistols, because after a while, Johnny Rotten was like, "The hell with this! I'm not going to do the drug.
I'm off." Yeah.
Yeah.
Which it was in the end, But this movie though didn't nearly get off the ground because of Sid's mother.
Oh.
She didn't want it to happen. This movie.
Really?
Yeah, Sid's mother didn't want it to happen, but then after the director had a conversation with her, a few discussions with her, she sort of backed down and sort of came to advise him as the director. And also she provided one of Sid's chains and padlocks. So that one he's wearing in the movie is Sid Vicious's chain and padlock. From his mother provided it. Little bit of trivia there for you.
That is cool. That is really cool.
The movie is it's realistic. It's a hard watch because of the drug situations.
And the cutting.
But that's what they went through. That's fact. They did through that. They were drug addicts. They were, this was their downfall. Not a happy ending. For both of them. But say the acting was brilliant. I mean, as I say, Chloe Webber's as Nancy, she's so good at playing that character. Me personally, I wanted to slap her sometimes. I mean, there was some violence in this. Sid just won. And I mean, to me, that did look like Gary Oldman did hit her, really did hit her. I mean, if that was the case, then, that's actors do have to do that sometimes, I suppose. But very good. They did work well together. Go on.
Like I said, I do want to try to respect all music. It just didn't appeal to me too much. I do have a couple of angry songs that I like, and I do have even a couple of songs that even if Lee heard it would go, that's a little, I didn't think he'd like that type of song.
You see, what you got to realise, as I said before, without punk, the music wouldn't have moved on to new wave, new romantic, because they came out of punk. As it's been said, Boy George started in punk.
Yeah, 6 Sputnik and even Spandau Ballet were there in the punk scene.
Yeah, Duran Duran.
They all were at the clubs.
Yeah, they were there. They were there watching these. So it's just a general change of direction in music. They saw them. They influenced them, as you say. And we would never have had, as you say, Spandau, Duran, Culture Club, Bow Wow Wow, because if there was no punk,
Hazy Fantasy.
Hazy Fantasy, yeah, Temple Tudor. I mean, Ed Temple was in this as the hotel receptionist, if you remember him. Who Killed Bambi?
Yeah. You wouldn't have had Grenada TV getting the edge that it got finally.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really well told story, really well acted, and as I say, there was, as I've said, we don't really know the truth. So, as many biopic movies do, they do twist a little bit here, add a little bit there.
And they went for the most dramatic.
Yeah, I mean, there is a few characters in the movie, maybe 2 or 3, what never existed, but just to to go with the story, I suppose. But also, you've got to give a big thumbs up to the other actors who played the members of the band as well.
Yeah.
You know, the drummer and the guitarist. The drummer was played by Perry, I think his name was. I mean, he's well known for British comedies. Perry. I'm trying to remember his name now. Perry. There we are. Yes. I've just got the cast names down here. Perry Benson played Paul, the drummer. But and also as well, Andrew Schofield, as it's been mentioned, Johnny Rotten. He had him off to a T, didn't he? I mean, he really did.
Yeah.
The way he talked and the way he acted on stage. But any other bits what you'd like to talk about, you two?
Well, yeah, I love this scene. This was the quiet scene where they're snogging in an alley. Yeah,
and then all the dustbins came falling down.
And all the dustbins came falling down, and then there was when Sid was walking around and he fell through a plate glass window.
That was so funny. That was so funny.
Yeah, and I love the girls, the punk girls sitting there watching him cut on his chest. I mean, like I've experienced that. My friends in Portland were like named Slasher and Doc and stuff like that because of their punkness and the fact that they would slash you.
Did you
look at you?
Did you recognize Kathy Burke as well?
Kathy Burke was in it. Yes, she was amazing.
Okay, now what do you think about the new punk? Now they're saying I heard was it Green Day, Rancid, The Offspring, and Blink 182. I don't know about the last two.
Right.
They're not new. They're over 20 odd years old.
Those aren't punk now.
Yeah, they're not punk now.
Get with the times, Ali.
I know, no, but I'm just saying, like Green Day and Blink 182. I'm not sure ever.
Yeah, but you see,
really good.
To them, the Sex Pistols was mostly one of their heroes.
Right.
You know, without them, they wouldn't have gone down that route musically. You know, it's, everything's got an origin.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and say punk has influenced. It has influenced rock. It's influenced goth.
Yeah.
As I said, new wave and everything like that.
Well, yeah, but again, to be fair, apparently punk not only is an insult, but these are the
punk bands that are in Boston.
Right.
There's Anti-Flag,
right,
American Nightmare, Dropkick
Murphys. Yeah, they're really big. Because they mention Boston a lot.
And because they're good punk bands.
But again,
in
that
Scotland,
there
is Bag of Rocks, who do actually time travel songs and stuff like that. I mean, there's a bunch of like Scottish punk still.
But there's one thing I want to point out. I don't know if you noticed a film about Sid Vicious, also including Sex Pistols. The music didn't have any original Sex Pistols songs in it.
No.
It was either re-sung by Gary Oldman or Andrew Schofield as Johnny Rotten, or they had songs sung by Joe Strummer from The Clash, or the Pogues as well, because the music was done by Joe Strummer.
Oh, the Pogues, yeah. The Pogues are
And
still,
the Pogues did do a really good job in this soundtrack. You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why they didn't use original. There might have been a copyright thing or something going on with Malcolm McLaren. I don't know. But I know I watched it and I thought, well, there was no real Sex Pistols songs in this. And then so I had to look that up. Yeah, there wasn't.
Yeah, and then there was these great, like, this scene was like with that wonderful sort of synth sound that was just beautiful. I mean, it was like,
I think that was that the Pogues Haunted, I think it was called.
Yeah.
Well, the Pogues, as much as I don't like them, I know they have cred. I know that they were on Saturday Night Live once, and one of the comedians goes, "I like my music with lyrics," but they were very talented. I think they were more talented than the Sex Pistols, to be honest. Not that I like either one, really, but
yeah, you might be causing trouble here.
But I mean, I like the Ramones, but that, like I said, it's also difficult too, because the other problem was in America it didn't really catch on, and if it caught on, it was more like, oh, this is just more of drugs. This is fueled by drugs, and it's not the happy it's not the happy of the hippies. It's mean. So
I mean, Sid Vicious was a bad advertisement for the music industry. You know, with the drugs situation. And you can understand why nobody wanted to be around him.
Well, I mean, again, people forget too that was all the 60s and the 70s. It was a lot of, the typical street drugs. Now it is the, doctor's drugs that people abuse, the medication.
In the music industry, it's always the street drugs. Am I right?
Well,
I mean, he was always doing heroin and
I mean, they said
cocaine.
It showed you in the movie, didn't they? Going on the street, found the drug dealer, and anything else you'd like to mention about this movie? Any bits?
Let me ask you a question, because unfortunately, as we know, and sadly, John Lennon was assassinated. Yes. Do you remember in England when Sid Vicious or any other famous person from a so-called punk, because that's really a critique, right? But that was a word that was coined by the critics. It wasn't coined by the actual musicians or people in it. They called it, garage or whatever. They called it
punk.
Did they? I thought they used a different name.
So you know who coined it?
What's that?
Tony Wilson at Grenada. So there.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's not really my scene. But again, do you remember news reports of them talking about any of these famous, quote unquote punk musicians or punk bands or whatever?
I don't remember any punk deaths on the news or anything like that, but I do vaguely remember that infamous TV interview what the Sex Pistols did.
Right, with all the swearing and all that, yeah.
Which they sort of reenacted on this in this movie. I do remember that, but it's so well known now, But that was the presenters goading them into doing it. So they just went along with it. Yeah, you want it, we'll give you it. So what can you do? Anything else you'd like to mention about this?
I mean, have you ever? Unfortunately, we also didn't compare it to a documentary. We didn't compare it to a documentary as well.
We don't need to. We just wanted to watch a fun movie.
No, and I mean, in some ways it is fun. In other ways, it isn't.
This so much.
Well, I mean, like I said, the acting was good, and the cinematography was good. It's just not my type. It's not my cup of tea.
Okay.
But I mean, again, that I also came in sort of toward the end of quote unquote real rock and roll. I mean, everything
Okay.
by the, I listened when I was a kid, I listened to, and my parents too, they listened to a lot of, balladeers and R&B and,
Okay.
that type of stuff.
I'll switch the conversation to a different direction. What about the acting done by the cat in this movie?
This one or the one in the movie?
The one in the movie.
Yeah,
Either one.
The little kitten and the little. Do you know? For a minute there, I thought they were going to eat the cat.
Yep.
Because they were so hungry. It was. You've got to have something to go. Ah.
Yep.
Yeah, but I mean the ending as well. When I watched it, I thought, "What's going on here?" There's a taxi turn up, and Nancy's in. Oh, I mean, she's dead. That was a bit.
And the kids were dancing to disco. Do you get it?
Yeah.
That punk was eaten up entirely by disco.
Oh yeah, it was on its way out.
It was swallowed wholesale by disco. And so these kids that Sid, the one who never bowed his knee to nothing, he ended up dancing with these kids who he'd sooner, kicked them in the teeth. But no, he ended up dancing with them because they said, "What are you, stuck up?" So I mean, that was another really sort of mesmerizing scene.
Yeah, it was. It was a weird way to finish the movie, but also I think it worked as well.
Yeah.
Driving off into the distance in a taxi.
Yeah.
And then it said just the words, Sid died 4 months later of drugs overdose. But I enjoyed it. I mean, this will be the only second time I've seen this. I enjoyed it. It was a good look into what they went through.
Yeah.
People should watch movies like this.
Yeah.
Gritty movies like this.
Yeah.
Because it's not all fantasy based and sci-fi. There is, there's real life.
And it's not as smarmy as some of the other things that I've suggested, but I do freaking love this movie.
Oh dear me. So shall we say final say and scores then? Because I think we've done favourite bits and stuff, haven't we? Unless you've got anything else.
You want to do a favorite bit?
I mean, yeah, like I said, this is tough for me. The acting's good. The dialogue is actually good. And there's a lot of, I mean, okay, Susie. But I mean, I just, like I said, I've already said what I was kind of exposed to, and I like the new wave. And some of that had punk in it too. The Buzzcocks, Pete Shelley.
Exactly. Yes.
The Clash. I mean, London Calling is a very angry song too, right?
Yeah.
So, and that was even in a James Bond movie, and I went, that doesn't fit. But yeah, I mean, so they had an influence. I just kind of, I mean, if their point was I want to rebel against being middle class, then they had a point. But I don't know if it was a big point. And I do like Blondie, Deborah Harry, even though now in her 60s she does more Spanish-oriented stuff. And I don't know if that's the age or the style, or her age and style necessarily. But I mean, again, that's the other question too. Is I kind of wonder a little bit if
she still lives in Queens, then she's surrounded by people from Puerto Rico and stuff like that.
That's fine. No, but what I'm saying is, I mean, again, just like you mentioned the influences, I mean, even the Beatles' White Album was a little bit off the norm.
Oh, yeah.
As well. Yeah. And they experimented with drugs and all that, too. So,
I don't think
I think the punk, to me, the punk is more influenced by, the Stones and, and all that. I think it's other people. I don't know if I'd give the Johnny Rotten, even though I like Johnny Rotten, the Sid Vicious was kind of a bad negative spokesperson. And there were a couple of other people that I wasn't too fond of. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I like it. I should have seen a documentary as well. I don't know where Malcolm McLaren is. I hope he wasn't as bad as supposedly everybody or most people says he was. But like I said, I knew him when he started getting into rap and stuff because my mother hated that I was such a big rap fan of the 80s. And then that changed to the angry NWA, which,
Well, you see,
yeah,
Malcolm, as I said before, Malcolm Klein was a
yeah.
good businessman. He knew
Mm,
what was going to be successful.
right.
He knew punk was going to be successful. He knew rap was going to be successful and pop. So that's why he went down that route. He did this, he did that. He got involved in fashion.
Mm,
You know, he's sadly no longer with us, right? But
yeah.
he was a very, very, good businessman. And as I
Mm,
said, as you mentioned before, the band members mostly didn't make a lot of money
And
because of
he was played by David Heyman, and David Heyman's been in everything.
I think he's Scottish, isn't he, David?
Yeah.
Rightly, yeah. But as I say, if he was such a good businessman, he mostly did keep the money. But there again, if Sid was spending all his money on drugs,
yeah.
I mean that scene where there was on the boat when Gary Oldman says, Malcolm McLaren says to Sid, "Where you going? I'm off to get some money. You don't need money. You." But very, very good scenes and all like that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
so, shall we score it?
So yeah, I'll give this an 8, mostly because of the cast and mostly because of the way that they filmed it and such.
Well, that's still a
But
good
like I said,
score, isn't it?
it's tough. Yeah, it's tough because you want to love music, but then you see so many stories of so many, Jimi Hendrix and Elvis Presley and all these others that seem to die because they seem to be too much into the drugs. Where I would love to have even a quarter of their talent. I understand
Overdone.
it's a stressful job. I understand that, but it's kind of like, wow, these people took 30 years to realize not to be constantly around the drug scene.
You do have a quarter of their talent.
Yeah, well,
You
okay, but
you have almost as much talent as Sid Vicious had.
No, I wanted to let that go. But anyway,
Anyway,
what do you how many
just let me do my
okay, go ahead.
final say, and then you can ask questions till. Okay, I like I said, I love this movie. I've loved it since the '80s. I basically this brought me into the punk realm. I before this I wasn't at all interested in that, but this was the hook, and um I had a vintage. Never mind the Bullocks. Scott's, that whole album, and that was amazing. And I love this band, and even if Johnny Rotten was the only one, or the major force in it, you can't fault Sid because he was like street cred. He was the one who was so hard. He was so hard, and she was so pretty. She had to die. That was so good. This was such a good thing. I'll give it 20 slices with a razor blade out of 10.
Oh, easy there.
Hell yeah.
We are not endorsing cutting or any.
You speak for yourself, Alex.
Okay.
All right.
Hey, go ahead and ask Lee the question.
So yeah, so so you said it was important. So what do you think of the '90s grunge? What do you think of? Because unfortunately, Courtney Love was in this, and as you know, Kurt Cobain committed suicide or supposedly did.
Well, yeah. I mean,
I wasn't a big fan of Nirvana. I was more a fan of like what is it, Soundgarden and Stone Temple Pilots. And unfortunately, he killed himself with drugs too.
Yeah.
Scott Whalen.
Yeah, I mean, also
So
Soundgarden, Chris Cornell as well. He killed himself as well.
So what do you think of this 90s grunge or 90s punk or whatever you want to call it? Some of the songs I liked. A lot of them I didn't.
Some of the songs I like. Some of the songs I can leave, but you can still see where the influence came from.
Yeah, like you had Pearl Jam, you had Alice in Chains.
It all harks back to the punk movement. And it also harks back to Elvis.
Yeah,
and it comes complete with Heroin Chic, which was Seattle and Portland all that time.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said, if it wasn't for Elvis, if it wasn't for the Beatles, the music wouldn't have changed. Because they say, if you didn't have Elvis, you would have had the Beatles.
Yeah.
But as we know, even in the 50s, even with Jerry Lee Lewis, he did admit that he stole a lot of R&B and gospel, and then started using that as
well, nearly all songs are
ripped off from somewhere.
What do you call it these days? Sampling. But let's see, what can I give this film? I enjoyed it. Brilliant acting. Visually, for me, for 1986, it's still stunning visually. I'm going to give it more than Alex did, but I can't give it as much as Susan did. Mine's just going to be a 10.
All right.
Because, Gary Oldman for me, I just think, please, whoever's out there, give him a knighthood. He needs one. Because he's so great.
And that Heyman, the guy who played Malcolm, was in the Rap C. Nesbitt that we reviewed.
Yeah. He's been in loads. He's been in loads.
Yeah, he's been in everything. So anyway, I was like, what have I just seen him? I've just seen him and I've just reviewed something. I just can't remember what it is. So I found it. I figured it out. So yeah. Anyway, I just had to do that, and I have to do what my friends and I did at the end of this podcast, because I have to honor the people who introduced me to this movie and help me convince my people to put it on the big screen for us. May I do that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll do, I'll just do my bits and I'll hand over to you.
Thanks.
Okay. So, Alex, Susan, it's always a pleasure, and today has been no different. Talking about Sid and Nancy with the almighty Gary Oldman in it. You guys out there, let us know what you think of this movie. Let us know.
Sign our petition for knighthood for Gary.
Yeah. Also, yeah, and let us know what's your feelings of the punk movement, the music, what influences it had on today's generation. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, and as Susan always likes to say, ding the bell, get the notifications. So, because we put videos up maybe 2 to 3 times a week. Well, it depends how we feel. Sometimes we don't put any up at all. Hey ho. But and if you want to be involved in the group, just leave us a message and we'll get in touch with you. You've got to be slightly insane though, because sanity is out the window when you're in this group. Just look at Susan. I think I've done my bit now, Susan, so I'm going to hand over to you now.
Okay, she wasn't pretty, she had to die, so I cut her with my knife. Fuck you, Punk rules, punk's not dead, it's laying in the corner bleeding.
Oh dear. So, was that it?
That's it.
Okay. She has to let it out every now and again.
Yeah, really.
Bye for now.